Guys, welcome back to the Scrap Life Adult side of the channel. We have another salvage auction analysis today, and this one is a very, very special car. We did a video on the main channel earlier in the year. Lee got to look at this car in person. I'm very disappointed that I didn't get to look at it. Ford GT, never seen one of these actually run through auction before. This was a somewhat local lot to us in Delaware, very small lot in Delaware, which is another kind of funny, just part of this car is that it showed up at a lot that you don't see a lot of supercars show up at. But this thing is already pre-bid $133,000. It is on reserve, and that reserve has not been lifted. So that means that it is higher than $133,000. I don't have it in front of me right now, but I think it's like an accident value of like $350,000. But the damage on this car was just absolutely staggering all over it. Just there's not really a good savable spot. Maybe a couple of the suspension corners. At the back, there's damage to the actual transmission housing itself. The entire back end of the car is gone. It's missing an entire suspension corner, although it does look like they do have the wheel and brake set up. I'm sure the wheel is damaged, but having the brake rotor and the caliper is definitely a bonus on a car like this. Now, normally, I can kind of speak to something on these cars. I have an opinion one way or another. If I think it's too much money, if I think it's a good value, if I think the risk is appropriate. This car, I almost don't have any idea, as weird as that might sound. I'm very just indifferent on it because I don't know enough about these cars to really know where the value lies. One thing that's very curious to me is the motor itself. If I remember correctly, the motor itself is a 5.4. It's a very similar motor to what comes in the Ford Lightning trucks. So the drivetrain on this car, how special is it to dictate this value? Or is the value coming from the body panels? But most of the body panels aren't good. So I'm very curious who is buying this car, what they're buying it for, and ultimately what's going to happen with it. So one way or another, it's going to be interesting to see what it sells for. Hopefully there's some action on it, and it's about to run right now. So let's see what happens. Alrighty, here we go. Texas. There's some people rolling. United Kingdom, that's a little bit interesting. Overseas, these cars I would think would have more value in the States, but maybe an international bidder will view this as an opportunity to get one of these cars and maybe save a little bit of money on the import taxes, all that type of stuff. Two interesting things. Number one, I'm looking in the right spot now. Pre-accident value of $399,000 as this thing keeps running. The other interesting thing is that this is not listed as running. We know that this car runs. Lee heard this car run.
But on this one, we got special permission from the general manager of Copart in this area. He A-okayed it. He said it's fine. He said it starts right up. We've started it up. Feel free to start it up. I'm not going to say no. Well, first and foremost, that's really good to see. Oil pressure, A-okay. That was my biggest worry. I was ready to smack that start button off so fast if that thing didn't fire up quick.
And I'm surprised that they didn't update the listing showing that this car was a running car. That would only help the sale. But this thing is doing fine on its own. Somebody in the United Kingdom is really in on this thing. I know there's a couple performance shops in Texas. Maybe it's possible that one of them uses this car to fix other cars, something along those lines maybe. Still on reserve though. Georgia. Man. They're just not letting this thing go. Now, one important distinction too is this car is on reserve, which means that the number that the insurance company has in mind for this has not been met. There is another terminology you'll see on approval, which just means that whoever is selling the car wants to look at it before they officially sell it. So if this was on approval, their number could have already been met and it's still going to go to them for the approval, but this is on reserve, which means that their number has not been met. There we go. This thing is a pure sale. So $164,000, and this thing is selling. And it's going to generate a little bit extra action. That's a smart move on the seller's part here to do that, to get a little bit more money out of this thing. It had to have been close to the number that they wanted. And it is causing extra action. Look at that. There you go, $170,000 bid on a wrecked Ford GT. I'm very curious to hear what your opinions are. I would love to give more input. It's kind of shocking is the only word that I can use to describe. I'm very curious on that car's history, but I'm curious what you think about that number. I think a lot of the times, people that aren't in this industry, they find it difficult to wrap their heads around some of the numbers on some of these cars, even that we pay for them. And we like to think that we're pretty thorough and diligent about assessing value to these auction cars. But that one is just $170,000 is a staggering number for a vehicle like that is in that shape, even though it's a very, very special vehicle. So later today, there's another very special vehicle that's going to be running. I'm going to do another video on that car as well. Hopefully you'll tune into that one and stay up to date on all the fun stuff we're doing on the Scrap Life Adult side of the channel here, but also all the big projects that are on the main Scrap Life Garage channel. So I'll see you on one of the channels in the next video.